Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. In less than 3 weeks, we will tee it up for real and get this much anticipated season underway. As is usually the case in August during camp, not much news finds its way out of Fort Schembechler. Today, which is Wednesday when we're recording, Jim Harbaugh, for the first time since camp started, addressed the media. He, of course, talked about Cade and JJ and that battle at quarterback. He said it is too close to call, and he said that is a good thing. So I think that's what we all expected him to say at this point. We'll have to wait and see until September 3rd against Colorado State who lines up under center, but I think we'll see both of them on that Saturday. Today we're going to take some time and talk about recruiting, though, with Steve Lorenz from 24/7 Sports. While fans are amped up for the coming season, many are at the same time disappointed with what they perceive to be a lackluster result on the recruiting trail for this class of 23. A lot of us thought that following a breakthrough season that included a Big Ten championship and a trip to the playoffs, this year's class would finally be filled with 4- and 5-star kids that would reflect that success. It hasn't happened that way yet. There is still plenty of time, though. As of today, we have 13 verbal commitments in a class ranked 27th nationally and 6th in the Big Ten. My guest today says don't push the panic button yet. If this Michigan team is as good as we think it's going to be, we will have time to assemble a very good, if not elite, class come signing day in December. Up next on this week's Game Day segment is one of the very best recruiting analysts in college football, Steve Lorenz from 24/7 Sports. So stay with us. Here with us on our Game Day segment this week is Steve Lorenz from 24/7 Sports. And yes, even though Michigan is preparing for the season and a lot of the concentration is on the upcoming season, recruiting never rests. And we're here to talk to Steve about what's going on in the recruiting world. So welcome back, Steve.
Hey, Mike. Good to be back on. Yeah, I'm kind of in recruiting was kind of annoying this offseason. So looking forward to the 2022 season for the actual team. You know, it's what are we, less than 3 weeks away? So should be another good season.
3 weeks away, and all we're doing is prognosticating at this point. We're at the point where let's say, hey, let's just tee it up and play. But until then, there's some other things to talk about. And as we said, there's always recruiting news. I think it was on Saturday, Steve, Michigan received a verbal from tight end Zach Marshall. He's a 3-star from Carlsbad, California. And I believe the second tight end verbal in this class. And I know Michigan's been interested in recruiting him for a long time. Your thoughts on him?
So Marshall was up for the barbecue at the big house at the end of July. But as you said, Michigan, so at that point they hadn't offered him yet. There had been a lot of communication there, though, which is, obviously communication always indicative of legitimate interest. I think the way Michigan played it in this one was, I think they knew that he'd come up to visit. And I don't know if many people follow the barbecue that much as far as what they actually do, but the kids actually do a workout. It's not just eating and hanging out. A lot of them go through drills and workouts. So it's the first part of the visit is an actual workout. So Michigan kind of had this one circled. I believe they were going to offer either way, but I think the way they played it, which is how I would have, is we know he's coming up. Let's at least, we'll get a great chance to see him in person, and then we can go from there with it. And he was apparently he blew them away in the workout, more so than they expected. So the offer was easy. It was a formality at that point, and then I think it was pretty clear at that point that Michigan would race out to the lead. Again, I do feel like, you and I have done this a while. Mm-hmm. I feel like we say it quite a bit, or I say it quite a bit, but I do think this is a guy who will end the cycle ranked higher than an 87 3-star. Smaller school. I think he transferred this year, though. He'll be playing at a bigger school. he'll have a lot more eyes on him. He'll be playing against some better competition. I think people will see what kind of talent he is. I believe he won like the skills MVP at the tight end position for one of the Elite 11 or Under Armour camps over the summer. Again, Michigan they'd had their eye on him before that, but just kind of one of those little things that kind of keeps that interest peaked. But yeah, I mean, this was a pretty nice. These are the kind of wins I think sometimes that in a way can separate Michigan, because this is a kid I think if he'd gotten more looks, had more eyes on him, I think some bigger schools would have been more heavily involved, especially coming into this senior year. So, this is another nice win. Second one for Grant Newsome at tight end. Yeah, Deacon Tonielli is the other one out of Oswego, Illinois, 4-star. So Tonielli is a 4-star. I would argue I think Marshall has a higher ceiling. I think he's more explosive, more athletic. So we'll be very interested to see how his senior year goes. But again, I think a guy, and like I said, I hate to sound like a broken record or that we're always defending the 3-star takes, but Marshall is definitely one of them that I feel like is a guy that I don't know if he'll be a 4-star. I mean, that just depends on our guys, what they think, but I don't think he'll be an 87 for the rest of the cycle.
I saw something online too, Steve, about him putting on his recruiting hat after he committed to Michigan, and his quarterback, I don't know if it's on where he's going or right there in Carlsbad, that is 5-star. I can't even think of the kid's name, but he's
Julian
Sayin. So I think,
yes,
isn't Georgia supposed to be his crystal ball, or at least in the lead for him, but Michigan is recruiting him?
So Michigan's been recruiting Sayin. I think Georgia might be the leader there, which actually, though, is not a bad thing for Michigan, because the other quarterback Georgia's heavily recruiting is Jaden Davis, the 5-star out of Providence Day School in Charlotte. And I think Davis is far and away Michigan's top target at the quarterback spot. And I would also argue Michigan is either 1 or 2 with Georgia in that race. So I don't think Michigan's been recruiting Julian Sayin. He visited earlier in the cycle. I think in the spring maybe he visited. Great player. I think Michigan fans might be okay if he went to Georgia if it meant giving the staff an even better shot with Jaden Davis. So I think Jaden Davis is a little bit better, but kind of splitting hairs though. Both guys are 5-stars.
Well, Steve, a lot of Michigan fans, I hear this every week from people who follow recruiting that listen to the show, that they're just still bummed about CJ Carr and Dante Moore within weeks of each other announcing, of course, CJ going to Notre Dame or committing to Notre Dame, and Dante Moore to Oregon. So I guess if nothing else, missing on those two guys in your backyard is a bad look, isn't it?
Well, it's not a good look. Honestly, I think especially with Dante Moore, and you and I talked about like before we got on, I don't really think there's much more Michigan could have done. They offered him in 8th grade. It was his first offer. Hard time believing that Michigan didn't build some good relationships there. Michigan has they have a better relationship now with the Detroit Kings staff than they've ever had since I've been doing this. So it's not a deal, like it's nothing like that. I just think it's, with Dante Moore especially, we see what Oregon's doing on the recruiting trail. Another top target for Michigan, Kenyon Sadiq out of Idaho, released a top 3 last week of Washington, Iowa State, and Michigan. Was set to make his announcement yesterday and actually committed to Oregon, even though they weren't in his top 3. If that kind of, you can put 2 and 2 together there, how Oregon is recruiting right now. So, I think the Moore one is a much bigger bad look, honestly, even though Carr obviously related to Lloyd Carr. I get the impression in that recruitment that I kind of think he was bent on doing his own thing, which more power to him if that's the route he wants to go. It is some bad luck for Michigan, but I think a lot of that goes away if they do get a kid like Jaden Davis. Jaden Davis ranked higher than CJ Carr in the 24 class. And right now, I'm not 100% that Michigan's going to take a quarterback in the 23 class. They took 2 in 2022. Neither of those guys get talked about very much. I think you're starting to maybe hear some buzz about Alex Orji being a potential guy for them. I'm very, very interested to see how he specifically develops. Somebody, maybe it was on our board, compared him to Michael Robinson at Penn State. I thought that was a fascinating comparison. I kind of forgot about Michael Robinson. He was a pretty good quarterback for Penn State back in the day. So, so they have 2 in 2022. They also have Davis Warren, the walk-on, who looked excellent in the spring. Did not look like a walk-on in the spring game at all. Looked like a guy who could start for a couple schools, maybe in like some of the lower tier schools in the Big Ten almost, just based on that spring game. But again, still heard good things about him, so I think they're in a position now where they would go all in on Davis. And like I said, that would alleviate a lot of the issue. Perception wise, yeah, it's not a good look to miss on, like I said, Moore especially. Again, you get a 5-star in the 24 class, and I think it wipes away some of it, because I know, like, in doing our podcast on the site with Sam and Bryce, we've believed that Dante Moore is better than Arch Manning, and we've been saying it for months, and the rankings are finally kind of starting to creep that way. I don't think most sites will have the guts to move Arch Manning off the number 1 spot just because he's a Manning, but I would take Dante Moore. So, not downplaying Michigan not getting him, because Moore could be the number 1 player in the country, and to have done things the right way with him for so long. I mean, we're talking like almost 5 years now of recruiting this kid, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
The family's big Michigan fans. That was known like immediately, like when they offered him, and so Michigan had a lot of things in their favor. So I'm not going to downplay the fact that they didn't get it done. You get a 5-star the next cycle. I think it does. I think it helps alleviate some of that pain.
Well, as you and I talked about before we started recording, in this day and age with everything that's going on in recruiting, a verbal in August does not mean anything until December. So does that mean we stay on Dante Moore and just keep that door open, hoping maybe a great Michigan season will change his mind?
I don't see why not, right? I mean, so that what was fascinating about this cycle at that quarterback is, this whole time, for a while it was like there was Notre Dame for Dante Moore. Then there was like some talk about LSU. He was liking LSU this whole time. So Michigan has never really seriously offered or recruited another quarterback in the cycle at all. And so I guess, like, if I'm Michigan, why not? Unless on his end he's adamant about not wanting to pick up the phone or not listening, then you just move on. Haven't checked in to see if that's the case yet. I don't know if maybe Michigan will be in a position to bide their time a little bit, and sort of slow play it. I don't see any scenario or any reasoning based on how their board stacks up that they wouldn't. There's been talk that Davis in 24 could reclassify. I don't know if that's legitimate or not. He's never said it, but that would probably eliminate any reigniting of the Dante Moore thing. But again, Michigan's literally offered. I think they did offer a couple other kids, but they never really seriously recruited them, like, at all. So I'd pick up the phone and call them again. I mean, there are attachments to Michigan. I mean, it can't be denied. No harm in not trying. I wouldn't put much stock or hope into it, but I don't know if Oregon's going to be any good this year or not. That again, we like we said before, I think Michigan's banking on having a really good year and impressing prospects with their on the field play.
Mm-hmm.
And could always possibly reopen some doors that were previously shut. I mean, we saw how they closed last cycle, getting guys like Derek Moore, guys that really weren't even on the radar for a bulk of the cycle. But that's what a Big Ten title and 11 wins will do for you. So, if they can repeat that or come close even, honestly, then I think, it could open some doors, and maybe Dante Moore would be one of those.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about some of the kids in this cycle who are still undecided that are out there, Steve, but are, reportedly warm on Michigan. This is in no particular order, but number 1 on my list would be Nicholas Harbor from Archbishop Carroll in D.C. He's a 5-star athlete. All you hear about is this kid is a freak. We've seen what he did. I don't know if it was in the AAUs and the 200 a couple of weeks ago, but man, he would be a great catch for us, wouldn't he, Steve?
Yeah, I'd have to try to think, but maybe the most purely athletic prospect that that I can remember Michigan recruiting. He's just different. It's one of those, if he has football acumen, right? I mean, there's no doubt, but if he develops into like a legit football player that even comes close to matching his athleticism, then I don't know how defenses will match up with the guy. He could be good enough to where he wouldn't even have to. We talked about this. I think I mentioned this a month or so ago. Like, he would be good enough to where he wouldn't have to be the guy getting the ball to impact. I mean, he's a legit 6'3", 200 plus, and runs like the wind. Just a fascinating prospect. And that's another one where Michigan has a lot of ins. I believe there's a connection with the track coach at Archbishop Carroll. I know one thing Sam mentioned was kind of interesting is I believe the athletic director at Archbishop Carroll is former Michigan basketball head coach Brian Ellerby, which is kind of a neat random connection to the program. So Harbor's big thing that for me is the question for me is how much is the track going to factor into where he chooses to go, because he's going to run track. I mean, that's a foregone conclusion. It'd be ridiculous if he didn't run track. So that's kind of the one that if Michigan can convince him on that end, I actually kind of think Michigan's in decent shape in this one. It's just a matter of, he's been listening to like LSU, who's got an excellent track program. South Carolina, he just went down there. I think that might have been where he had an event in that area and I think visited South Carolina while there. Maryland's kind of hanging around because it's the hometown school. I can't imagine seeing him pick Maryland over some of the other schools that are recruiting him, but I guess you never know. But yeah, Michigan, this is target A for Michigan, no doubt. And to be clear, one of the things, we had this about a month or so ago, Michigan's recruiting that receiver now. They were originally recruiting him at that edge spot, but it was also always kind of like a wherever you want to play. If you tell us you want to play receiver, we'll recruit you at receiver. And that's kind of what happened. And cause Michigan would tell him he could play quarterback if he wanted to. Just get this kid on campus and then we'll figure it out later. So yeah, his big thing has been track has kind of interfered with his visit schedule. So I suspect he'll be up at some point during the season, but I do not believe a visit's been finalized yet.
That would be sweet to see him out at the receiver spot with that kind of speed. And when you look at the guys we're recruiting, a couple of 3-stars are what I read about most at the wideout position. Steve, Jaron Hamilton from Gainesville, Florida. Then there's Mikey Matthews from Mission Viejo, California. Talk about those two guys.
So Jaron Hamilton's a fascinating guy. He's not going to be a 3-star. I don't know if he's an 89. I think we have him at 89 right now. Whether he goes to Michigan or not, he's somebody who, like I said, it won't be a 3-star prospect. Very good. I think Michigan's keeping a close eye. I think the Kenyon Sadiq, actually, the guy we talked about earlier from Idaho, Michigan was recruiting him at receiver. Him going elsewhere may open the door for one of these two guys, because they already have Fred Moore. They have Samaj Morgan. They're recruiting Harbor at receiver. I think would take if they had the right 4, they would. So Hamilton's a guy that's visited. Not sure he's set an official with Michigan yet or not, but he also has Bama, Florida, some other, or no, not Florida, Miami maybe. I know, because the weird thing is he's from Gainesville, but Florida's not recruiting him. That's been kind of interesting story. But I really like him. He's one of those guys that kind of popped immediately, even though he's a 3-star. And then Mikey Matthews has been one of the hotter names out west this offseason as a receiver prospect. And really, because at the time, Michigan felt pretty good about Sadiq. So it was kind of interesting that they offered Matthews because, like I said, they would call it a day with the 2 guys they have at Harbor. And then if they'd gotten Sadiq, they'd have been done. But they still offered Matthews after hosting him, and they're legitimately targeting him. So he's definitely a name to watch. I think it could be in its situation, honestly. I know with Hamilton, he's transferring schools. He's still in Gainesville. I know Michigan's really going to be watching the first few games of his senior film very closely. Could be the same with Matthews. It really could be a deal where maybe they make a run at the guy who maybe looks a little more impressive to begin his senior year. But yeah, Matthews been rising throughout the spring and summer. I want to say is it kind of reminds me. I don't think he's as good as what Chris Olave was, a 3-star out of San Diego who rose late in the cycle. The difference was Ohio State got involved there, but still a guy that, I don't know if San Diego is really a high school football hotbed. Was it Reggie Bush came from San Diego, right? But otherwise, it's not a spot I think that gets a ton of attention. So another guy though, two guys we'll watch early on senior year. We'll see where Michigan goes, but I expect that both of them would be on campus at some point.
Well, another force is our kid who's designated as an athlete is Jeremiah Love from Christian Brothers in St. Louis. I still read that he's really interested in Michigan. And how does Michigan envision using him?
People on our board want him to play running back. I think Michigan's recruiting that at corner, though. There were a few guys that fit that athlete mold that they've been recruiting at corner. One of them, Jacoby Johnson, just committed to Oklahoma. But Love is another guy that is listed as an athlete because, he's being recruited all over the place. But Michigan, I think, prefers him at the cornerback spot. Yeah, they're right. They're in it. I think Oregon, Texas A&M, I'm trying to think of who the other was, Notre Dame are in there. And so you hear those three schools, the way that recruiting's been going lately, you think, well, yeah, maybe not. But Michigan is right in the thick of that one. So he's supposed to come back for a game this fall. But he's another one that I think when he first started to heat up was a low 4-star guy. It was like you watch his film and it's like, no, this guy's not a low 4-star guy. I mean, this guy can play. So like him at corner, I can see the argument at running back if you watch his film. I mean, he's super explosive, but sometimes those guys have a better shot to go pro playing defensive back, than they do running back. So I'm assuming that's where Michigan is kind of how they pitch that. Like corners are making more money in the NFL. It's harder to find a good corner, at the college level. So, interesting to see where that one goes. But yeah, A&M, Oregon, Notre Dame, Michigan, kind of the ones involved there.
Well, speaking of the corners, there's another two we've been after. I'm not sure if this is how you pronounce his name, but Javian Toviano, 4-star from Arlington. He's 6 foot, 190 pounds. Another corner we're in on is a 4-star J.R. Hill. He's from Kankakee, Illinois, a Midwest kid. What do you think on those two kids?
Toviano to me is the best corner in the class, I think. Michigan did a great job on this. He did come up for an official. Just tough to get Texas kids out of Texas right now, right? I mean, Texas actually just got beat for Jordan Matthews, another guy that Michigan was really recruiting. That was a big surprise. So I suspect they'll turn the heat up even further on Toviano, not that they weren't already, but then A&M and LSU. I think those are the four. It's Michigan, LSU, A&M, and Texas. He's an amazing player. I mean, wherever he goes, I'd be shocked if he doesn't turn into an all-conference level type guy. I mean, he's that good. And then Jair Hill's been one of Michigan's top corner targets for over a year now. And they're weirdly, we kind of laughed about this on the board. He visited and said that Michigan's NIL pitch was like the strength of the visit, which is not something we've heard a lot, right? But ironically, though, they're really having to fend Illinois off in this race as the hometown program, because he is far and away their top guy, like overall, regardless of position type thing. So we were kind of chuckling, thinking that it'd be Michigan's luck that the guy that says their NIL pitch was the strength of the visit would then commit elsewhere. Would be just kind of one of those things where Michigan fans throw your hands up and say, well, what the heck? How bad luck could you possibly have? That being said, though, I mean, I still think it'd be Michigan for Hill. I put a crystal ball in a really long time ago because we were told it seemed like he was actually close to making a verbal. He slowed things way down. He was another one that was up for the barbecue, though. I still think Michigan gets this one done at the end of the day. This would be because they're facing Illinois mostly. I think there's a couple other schools in there, but you can't lose a kid like this to Illinois. I get it. I understand a hometown feel, but I mean, two programs on just totally different wavelengths right now, and would be a massive disappointment to lose a kid of that ability to Illinois, honestly. I mean, sorry if there's any Illinois fans out there listening to this, but just, it's, you know what I mean, though. You can't, just like one of those things where you look at it, you don't see Notre Dame losing a battle like that to Illinois. You don't see Ohio State losing a battle like that to Illinois. Like Michigan, this is one quietly. I know he's not the highest ranked guy, but he's been a top guy for them for months. You got to finish the job on this one. Got to get it done. So. No,
absolutely. And it would be sweet to get either one of those two corners. And sticking with the secondary, Makari Vickers is a name we've heard a lot about in this cycle. He's a 5-star kid out of Quincy, Florida. The other safety is we're in on is 4-star Sean Russ he's also a Florida kid. Hard to believe that you can't keep them in Florida, but where do we stand with those two guys?
Vickers, I would lean probably Oklahoma. Right now, he dropped a top 3. It was Michigan, Alabama, Oklahoma. With him, I think the biggest, they made the top 3, which is great. But what kind of happened there is, so I believe Quincy's right next to, I think it's just outside of Tallahassee. The Raylan Wilson decommitment really hurt Michigan as far as that one goes. Because Wilson was actively recruiting, they're from the same town. He was actively recruiting Vickers, and then he decommits. Just doesn't really, why would you recruit me to go here and then not go there yourself, kind of thing. So Russ is one of the newer names. I know Louisville's in his top group. That's who I lean towards right now. I'm not 100% sure that Michigan is super serious on that one, but might be a name in the more sort of a back pocket name, I call it. a guy to maybe think about if they do end up sealing an official visit there. I'd say this about safety. I'm not 100% convinced Michigan wants to take a safety in this cycle. I think they really feel like they cleaned up house last cycle. And not saying they'd take one if they got the right one. I think they're not going to reach at all at that position. That's one spot. Like I said, I think they feel they really like the guys they signed. You got Damani Dent, you got Zeke Berry, Sab. I mean, all those guys, like all three of those guys were top targets for them. And so that are all on campus now, obviously. So I think they feel comfortable there, just not a spot they're going to reach at.
Well, there are still so many kids out there that could swing this recruiting class and really bump it up from the number 27 that it's ranked at right now. But and we could go on and on with a lot of these names that we've been talking about in this cycle. But are there any right now in August, Steve, that you're hearing that we have missed? We could get commitments from maybe even before the season starts?
I don't know about that. I think things really slow down the last couple of weeks before the season because most staffs are focused on their teams, and so are the kids, right? I mean, they have football. They're obviously playing football this fall too. I think it'd be more of I'm looking at Penn State, Michigan State, the big home games, probably like in late like October, I think will be a month. September, they're probably going to host some guys. I don't know. We don't know exactly who yet. I mean, we might have a couple guys listed as official visitors in September, but I would expect things to maybe be a little bit different than they normally are and kind of gradually heat up throughout the season. Whereas, I think as Michigan, covering Michigan, like I think we've talked about before, we're used to seeing them like almost like fill up at this point. And then they play the season out. Depending how the season goes, they're either trying to close strong or they're trying to like scramble to hold on to the guys they already have. So nothing imminent right now. I think one position I'm really interested in is how they finish on the offensive line. I think getting Evan Link a few weeks ago was a massive commitment for them. I think they really, really needed that commitment, like big time. So he was a top target, and they've recently put out another wave of offers to both some interior and tackles. So guys like Nathan Ifobi, Nick Fattig's a Texas Tech commit that I actually think they have a really good shot at, and is a guy who I also think is very underrated. He'll be on campus sometime this fall. And I think if they impress there, that'd be a name to remember out of a small town in Texas. I can't remember the name of it, but offensive line will be really interesting to me. And then otherwise, we're watching the interior of the defensive line is kind of interesting too. They had McKeel Gardner locked up, and then what do you know, Oregon kind of comes out of nowhere and gets that one. It's kind of a theme, sensing a theme here. If anyone's been listening to the entirety of the episode, Oregon comes in there. I think they're trending down for Caden McDonald out of Georgia. I think he'll stay in the South. And then Xavier McLeod was another one who he had a really good visit to Michigan and came out of it like just Michigan this, Michigan that. But what we were always kind of hesitant to really put a ton of stock into it. I suspect it'll be South Carolina or Georgia for him. So, that'd be another position where maybe we'll see some new names pop up. We always talk about like where they're going to finish. I have no idea right now. It's going to be very interesting. A great season should really help, right? I mean, it should be different than years past where they're losing the last two in November and losing the bowl game and just have no momentum recruiting wise heading into the second signing day, if not the first. Feel like it'd be a little bit different this year. So that's always something that I think they're kind of banking on that a little bit. So we'll just have to see. But I guarantee there are going to be new names that are going to pop up that we haven't talked about or I might not even be aware of at this point.
As always, great to have our guest today on the show talking recruiting, Steve Lorenz from 24/7 Sports. And there are a lot of names we missed, and we could go on and do hours on this. And once the season gets underway, Steve, we always make time for recruiting because it's such a fan favorite and a focus of not only Michigan fans, but all college football fans. So we look forward to getting you back soon. And again, we thank you for your time. Always great to have you on the show, and we look forward to that next visit.
Appreciate you, Mike. Thanks.
On Quick Hits today, next week our scheduled guest will be Nick Baumgartner from The Athletic. As most of you know, Nick has covered Michigan football for MLive, the Detroit Free Press, and now The Athletic. So we look forward to getting his thoughts on this season. Make sure you tell your friends and family about the show and join us again next week. Thanks again to recruiting writer Steve Lorenz from 24/7 Sports for joining us today. That will do it for now. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue.